Welcome back, everyone. I hope everybody's doing fantastically well. Thank you for joining us. Episode 181 of Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. I have the fantastic Dennis Hall here today with me. How are you, Dennis?
I'm really well, thanks, Darren. Yourself?
Very well, sir. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And for everybody out there, we've got a fantastic episode. Why wait until you are 65 or older to enjoy leading the life of your dreams? Absolutely, I second that. Dennis has over 30 years management and leadership experience from working in businesses large and small. With an MBA in marketing management, he is able to provide insights into the complex dynamics that drive powerful business results from both better staff management practices and effective customer attraction and retention strategies. Dennis was a registered coach and facilitator with the Australian Institute of Management, and he regularly speaks at business conferences throughout Australia and internationally on a variety of topics, including mastering the secret language of business, the 6 deadly sins of negotiation, working less to live longer, how to get paid doing something that you love, and how to retire 10 years early. Dennis's business consultancy, Direct Dialogue, is focused on developing sustainable growth strategies for micro and local business. And Dennis has written a fantastic new book, If 70 is the New 50, When Do I Get to Retire? So we're going to be chatting about that today. And Dennis, let's jump in. Tell us a bit about you, your background. How did you get into what you're doing? And then we'll kind of dig into the motivation behind the book and go from there.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think like most people that are of a more mature age, that there are lots of twists and turns in the road that lead you to where you currently are. And I'm certainly no exception to that. I had a long corporate career, mostly in the tourism and hospitality industries. And in the late 90s, decided that enough of that and set up a technology business of all things.
Right.
Predominantly motivated by what was then a big thing in 97, 98, the Y2K phenomenon.
Yes, I remember.
Huge demand for technology support. And I thought, well, if there's ever a time to start my own business, now's the time to do it. So I started a business in that field and ran that quite successfully for about 5 years before I ended up selling it, taking 18 months off and just reevaluating where I wanted to go from there. And that led me into the consultancy realm and business coaching, which I kept up for about 12 years until my big turning point in 2015, which we'll get to talk about a little bit more, I'm sure, when we start delving into what motivated me to write the book.
Absolutely. And let's kind of give the audience a bit of a backstory or set the scene in a way. Obviously, you know, a lot of your work is focused around working smarter, trying to find a way to enjoy your work-life balance and not wait for this retirement, you know, window that everybody seems to think is going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. So why do you think that's come about? I mean, why do we still cling on to this Nirvana at the end of the rainbow?
Look, I think it's a good question. I think the short answer, because it is quite a complex issue, but the short answer is so many people live lives of quiet desperation that the retirement picture of, you know, everything's going to be great once I retire, you know, is something that far too many people hold on to. It's the light at the end of the tunnel that they believe is going to turn their lives around. And, you know, life might be pretty crap at the moment, but, you know, in 5 years or 10 years or however many years you are away from retirement, it'll all be fixed. Because I'll be able to put my feet up and do what I want, you know.
Yep.
And the reality is that picture really hasn't been accurate for a long time, probably well over 50 years. But it still clings on regardless. And that's one of the motivations behind writing the book. Is to try to give people a more accurate picture of what their life might look like if they don't do something about it sooner rather than later.
And, like for my own, I was having this discussion with a friend of mine yesterday, actually. And, he said, oh God, the world's crazy. I just want to retire. And I said, you know what? I'd actually get bored. Like I need to still have something to do. And maybe I can work a little less intensely, but if I just retired 100%, I would go crazy. So, and I think that's probably the same for a lot of people in this modern world where we're constantly working, we're constantly stimulated. We need to be stimulated. We need to be doing things. We need to be chasing goals. It's kind of part of the human condition. So it makes sense if you can find a way to balance your life the whole way through it, as opposed to waiting for this time that you retire, that you might not even enjoy anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think the sooner you can take control of your life so that you can do what you want rather than what other people want you to do, the better off you're going to be. I mean, life throws a whole heap of responsibilities and challenges our way. Some of them we choose and some of them we don't. Yep. So we're never fully in control. But I mentioned before that too many people live this quiet life of desperation because they've allowed their circumstances to rule what they do and where they're at. And when you say that you'd get bored if you retired, I think you're bang on there. The majority of people fall into this category of be careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Because they wish for a decade that they were retired doing nothing. And then within 12 months, 18 months max of them retiring, they're going crazy.
Yeah. And they drive their other half crazy.
Can you drive your Winnebago around? How many TV series can you watch? How many movies can you go to? You've got to have a life with purpose. We are purposeful people. Yep. So retirement is just, for me anyway, and for what I encourage others to consider is retirement is about doing what you want rather than what other people have wanted. When we take a decision to have a family, we are then responsible for that family. So yes. We have to do things that we otherwise wouldn't do because we want to make sure that our family's taken care of. And I'm not advocating that we move away from those responsibilities because they're important, very important. Yep. But once we've reached the stage of life where we've lived up to our responsibilities, well, then it's time for us. And that doesn't mean to say that we abandon our family or we abandon our responsibilities, but it does mean to say that we need to reprioritize what we consider to be important and not so important.
Yeah. And I love the way you said, live a life with purpose. That sums it up for me. Whether you're retired or not retired or, in inverted commas, retired, you need to have a purpose. That's what continues to drive the human being. And I think that's, you put it really well. And I think if you can find a way to balance that all the way through your life, all the better for it.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more.
So let's chat about your book. Everybody can see your book up there in the background. If 70 is the new 50, when do I get to retire? Tell us about what the book's about, why you decided to write it, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, I guess the book had its roots probably about 2012. At the time, I was living with my wife in Noosa.
Yep.
She was the deputy principal of a fairly large private school there. I had my management consultancy business, which was, very healthy.
Yep, right.
But our youngest daughter was approaching the age where she was getting into year 11 and 12. And the reasons for us staying in Noosa were going to evaporate because we'd lived in Noosa for quite a few years and we wanted to provide Jasmine with a stable upbringing. So she went to the same school, had a circle of friends, but once year 12 was out of the way and she was going to qualify for university at the end of 2014, all of that was going to change. There was no reason for us to stay in Noosa if we didn't want to. Yep. I mean, Noosa's a good place to live, don't get me wrong. We weren't clambering to get out of the place. But we did decide that perhaps it was time to reconsider what we wanted out of our lives. So for us, it became an exploration of what are the opportunities. And one of the one of the bucket list things that my wife had always had a hankering to do was to live and work in the country of her birth. She was born in Germany, but moved to Australia with her family when she was 4 years old. So to all intents and purposes, she's an Aussie, right? Yep. But she has obviously strong cultural ties. Myself, I've got an English background. I had my formative years in England, but came to Australia when I was 19, and have been in Australia ever since. So when my wife said to me in 2012, well, you know what, I wouldn't mind living and working in Europe for a couple of years. That got me thinking. It surprised me because I didn't think that was something that she was particularly interested in. No. And when she said Europe, I think she was being diplomatic in that she didn't want to state a country. She had a perception that maybe I'd want to go and live in England, and there's nothing that I would want worse than that. Don't get me wrong, England's a great country to visit and has got an awesome culture, but you don't want to live there. So I said to her, look, you know, for me, England, got relatives there, got friends there, but don't want to live there. What about Germany? So we decided that we would move to Germany, and 2015 was going to be the year we did that, given that Jazz would finish high school in 2014. And we involved Jazz in this discussion in the sense of giving her an option. If she wanted to come with us and she wanted to take a gap year at the end of year 12, she was welcome to do that. But at the time we were planning all of this, for her, 2014 was her opportunity to leave the nest, and she couldn't wait to get out of that. That did change, but that's another story. So we started making plans, and it probably took us 18 months to put a plan together that was going to be realistic. I mean, first and foremost, you know, my wife needed to seek employment of some sort for the time that we were away. I needed to totally restructure my business because my business was very much about in person. And in 2012, 13, 14, trying to do business online via mediums such as we're talking today was very much blue sky thinking for a lot of people, and certainly not as practical as it is now. Thank you, COVID, for that, accelerating that process. So I needed to totally restructure my business and decide, you know, what was feasible, what wasn't. So by the beginning of 2014, we'd got a plan which was workable. We'd done the finance side of it. You know, what can we afford? What can't we afford? So we made plans then to actually make the move, and we ended up moving to Germany in July 2015. Wow. Jasmine stayed in Australia but joined us for about 6 months from September of that year. Nice. And so we moved to Germany. My wife started working with an international school in the August because the term years over there are different. We operate on a calendar year in Australia. In Europe, they operate on an August to July year. So we moved to Frankfurt, and she started at an international school, and I started. Well, it didn't start, but was redoing, working with a number of clients, probably about 20% of my client base in an online environment rather than in a face-to-face environment. So that was designed to be a 2-year adventure, but we ended up staying for 3.5. We enjoyed it so much. So we didn't come back to Australia until the end of 2018. It was at that point, really, that the book, or the seed for the book, was planted, because all of our friends, when we came back and we were talking to them about our adventure and what we'd done and, you know, all of this sort of thing, they were all saying the same, how did you do it? And we'd love to do something like that. And but we couldn't because of this, or we couldn't because of that. And I thought, you know what? I think there's a book in this. Because there's so many people that are expressing an interest in, show me how. So I started probably midway through 2019, started structuring what a book could look like and using our experience as a living case study.
Perfect.
That whilst my lifestyle and my wife's lifestyle is different to everybody else's, we're all individuals, there are certain underpinning things that apply to all of us, and the processes that I put in place can apply to anybody regardless of what your circumstances are. So it's about the formula, it's not about the circumstance itself, and really that it took me 7 months to write the book. So by January, February 2020, the book was ready to go.
Which is not a long time, really. So you obviously, it just kind of flowed out of you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I had kept a journal of our experience in Germany and Europe, all the traveling that we did and some of the challenges that we faced. And so a lot of that, even though it needed to be tidied up, was already done, right? So the rest of it was about the business case. How do you support your lifestyle when you turn your world inside out and upside down? And my background, and especially with the Australian Institute of Management with corporate business coaching, already gave me a lot of that. I'd already got a lot of materials in that space that I just modified to suit an individual rather than an organization. So probably 60% of the book was already done. So it wasn't like I was starting with a blank slate. There was already a lot of stuff there that I could just adapt and fine tune. But then, of course, in late February 2020, that wonderful COVID hit our world, and by the end of March, our borders had closed, and there was no way I could publish the book without having something in it about COVID. So I really had to wait about 3-4 months to gather information, and to establish some case studies, see what COVID was doing, what impacts it's having on business, on individuals, so that I could incorporate that into the book. It's pointless telling people how to change their lifestyle if the biggest single event in living memory isn't included in it.
That's right. It's amazing how important it is to be true to the period that you're in.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yep.
Without a doubt.
Fascinating.
So yeah, that's the condensed version of where the book came from, and what motivated me to write it.
And were there any parts of the book that were harder to really put down on paper, or was it all pretty even in that respect?
Look, I think any author that is talking about their own life experiences will probably say the same thing, in that it is challenging to accurately reflect and report on what happens to you, because you don't always get everything right. Life is that, at school, we get the knowledge and then we get the test, right?
That's right.
But in life, we get the test and then we get the knowledge.
That's right.
So it's about being brave enough to put that information out for everybody else to see. So that's a bit of a challenge, to be able to do that. And obviously there are things that you're more prepared to share than others. We all have aspects of our lives that we prefer to keep private. For a variety of reasons. And then, to be honest, Darren, I think the second biggest challenge was actually discussing with people how COVID has impacted on them. I've been very fortunate through the COVID experience in that my business hasn't really been affected too much. I've had to make some shifts, as we all have. But in terms of downturn and where's the next dollar coming from, I haven't had to face that. So I'm very thankful for that. But some of the people that I spoke to, their lives have been shattered. And being exposed to that, talking with those people and seeing the impacts that's had, not just on them, but on their family members and on their circle of friends, that's pretty tough.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, a lot of what you've touched on in the book is quite mindset based and psychological based as opposed to tactical based. And I'm assuming that a lot of that has come from all those discussions as well.
Yeah, definitely. And look, to be honest, a few people have said to me, oh, you should have more detail on how to manage your super better, or,
Yeah.
you should go into more detail on how to reorganize your finances, or, what the tax laws are around this, that, and the other. And that's not my area of expertise, number one.
Yeah.
But number two, when I was researching the book, and I did have to do a fair amount of research, even though it's based on my experiences, I discovered there is an absolute plethora of information on what to do with your super, what the tax loopholes are or are not, how to organize your finances, lots of information on that, how to structure things, plenty of information. And as a matter of fact, in the book, I provide people with like a bibliography of here's some suggested resources to go and check those things out. So I didn't see any point in reinventing the wheel with that stuff. I think it's more important for people to get their head in the right space than it is for all the other stuff. Once you've got your head in the right space, you can then say, okay, now I need to start looking at the nitty gritty of, what's going to pay the rent and, of things, or the mortgage, or whatever. But until your head's in the right space, there's no point in having all of that stuff organized, because you're not going to be able to do anything with it anyway.
Yep, too true, so important. And that's kind of where I wanted to get in this conversation is, can you maybe expand a little on, what you've researched and what you've discovered and what you've put down in the book about exactly how to go about that process of getting your head in the right space and making sure you have the right mindset to be able to handle everything that you need to do?
Yep. Okay. Well, look, I'd like to start responding to that question by first of all talking a little bit about the environment.
Sure, please do.
So the environment when it comes to retirement, and we touched on this at the beginning of the conversation, people have a picture in their mind that has very little basis in reality. In Australia, and our situation here in Australia is mirrored across most Western developed societies. We have an aging population. In Australia, and when I researched through the Australian Bureau of Statistics and various other government sites, we've got something like 46% of our workforce is going to be over 55 within the next 3 years. So that's a lot of people, right? And we need to consider that the map or the picture for retirement was actually developed at the turn of the 20th century. Yes. So in the early 1900s, the retirement model was developed. And that retirement model established a retirement age of 65. We're now working towards 67, and by the end of this year, that'll be pretty much in place. Yep. But at the turn of the 20th century, it was 65. The life expectancy of Australians overall was 71 at that time. So, if you made it to retirement, you weren't going to be retired for very long, right? Yep. So the social support mechanism, and the pension in particular, was designed to be funded for between 5 and 7 years.
Right.
Now, fast forward to the 21st century, and our life expectancy now is 83, not 71. And even if we say that the retirement age is 67, right, we've got 15 to 17 years of retirement, yep, as opposed to the original 5 to 7 years. That's a much more expensive bill for the pension fund to support, right? Let's not even get into the conversation about how poorly the government manages that fund. But the reality is the money is not there to support people for 15 to 17 years. Mm-hmm. It's just not there. Yep. So retirement, our view of retirement needs to change, and society's view of retirement needs to change. Retirement is no longer about let's do nothing and just enjoy. Retirement is another phase in our lives. Like the first big phase in our lives is education. Yep. We go to school for 15 years. or close to get the knowledge and the education we need to be valuable contributors to society for the next 40 years, right? And then it was basically, you know, once you've contributed to society over that 40 years and you retire, we forget about you. And when only 15 to 20% of the population was retired, that was the appropriate way to look at it.
That's
but
right.
when 45 to 60% of the population is retired, and that's the figure that we're approaching as baby boomers go into retirement, we're midway through that now.
Yeah.
More and more people are retiring every year than are joining the workforce, right? And as a figure that I picked up, which actually surprised me, when pensions, etc., were first of all established, it was something like a ratio of 40 people in work for one person in retirement.
Whoa.
Right? As of 2016, that figure is 4.9 people in work for every person in retirement.
Wow.
So we need to look at retirement differently. So it's no longer a let's just kick back. It's another phase of our lives where we can contribute. We don't necessarily need to have the same earning capacity that we had in our working life, but we still need some sort of earning capacity. But our opportunity to contribute to society is exponentially greater because we've got a lot of experience, you know, and people do want to have a life of purpose. Most people approaching retirement want to be able to continue to contribute, but they're just not quite sure how to. And that's what I talk about a lot in the book. And it's borne out by you know, how to get paid for doing what you love is a chapter in the section in the book, right? How do you get paid for doing what you love? Because here's a partial solution, not for everybody, but certainly for a lot of people that are approaching retirement age. Instead of just having a hobby, why not continue that hobby, but structure it so you can earn an income from it?
I agree. Totally agree.
And that way, you're doing what you love. I mean, you and I, Darren, we do what we love, right? And the bonus is we get paid for it.
That's right. We have so much fun.
we don't mind working because
we look forward to it. Yeah.
It is not work anymore. 100%. And in retirement, that's what we need to be thinking about. What can I do that I really enjoy, but I can earn an income from? You know? And that's what I try to get across in the book is, look, you can turn any hobby into a revenue producing income generator if you go about it the right way. And the book explores that. You know, here's how you do it. Here are the steps to follow. Here's the research you need to do. So there is none of this. You know, if people have got a job that they hate, the worst thing that they can think of is to continue working after retirement. Because work equates to them to the job that they hate.
Correct.
But if they, let's say for example, they enjoyed making ashtrays. You know, they make personal ashtrays for people, and they really enjoy that. And at the moment, they're doing that, and they're making these ashtrays and giving them away to friends and relatives. And everybody goes, "Oh, isn't that wonderful?" And they go, "Oh, yeah, and I really love that." But wouldn't it be great if they could do that, still enjoy it, and generate some income from it?
Definitely. They could either put something together online, they could open up a market stall. There's a million different ways they could do it.
The thing for me, I think that retirement should be about, it's about choice.
Correct.
You know, in our working life, we often have to do things that we would prefer not to because our choices are limited. We've got to put bread on the table. We've got to pay the mortgage. So that means sometimes we have to do things that we prefer not to. But in retirement, we're not under the same financial pressures, that provided we've, you know, done some planning and, you know, we've done the right things in terms of working towards a secure end of working life. And for a lot of people, that's going to happen because of their super. For a lot of people, it's not going to happen because they've been self-employed and they've not got the super that, you know, people that have been in a job have been in. People that have been in a job that's physically demanding are not going to want to keep up that level of physical activity, you know, in their late 50s, early 60s, you know, which is why I always smile when politicians say, oh, look, you know, just work for an extra 5 years. Well, that's not easy to do if you're a bricklayer and you're bending over, or, you know, you're a tile cutter, or, you know, that's physically demanding work. And there comes a point where even if you love it, your body says no more, you know.
I like it.
So, yeah, I think that people need to understand that retirement is no longer about just fading into the distance. Retirement is about, what are my choices? What would I love to do? How can I contribute in this next 20 years of my life cycle, so that I'm actually leaving a bit of a legacy here? And I think if people approach retirement on that basis, then there is nothing wrong when you turn 65 or 66, or if you retire 10 years early at 55, as I've almost done. I classify myself now as semi-retired.
Nice.
Then, you know, you can take 2, 3, or 4 years off and go on your trips or travel around Australia or whatever, but you know that that's not the rest of your life. You're just taking an extended break, and when you come back, you're going to do this or you're going to do that, or, you know, so it's about being able to make those choices. And in reality, anybody that is watching and listening to this broadcast today, anybody at any stage in their life has the opportunity to pivot, to change things.
Absolutely.
Right? You might be trapped in the short term, but every single person on the planet is only 12 to 18 months away from a life of choice rather than a life of desperation.
Definitely, particularly in this era of technology and the internet. There are so many things everybody can do, and they can start small and grow them over time, and the choices are abundant.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. We have so much choice. But again, in order to be able to identify those choices and opportunities, you have to do something different with this.
Yep,
right?
I like it.
And if you've been in a job, and there's nothing wrong with being in a job for your entire career, plenty of people do that and do it very, very well.
Yep.
But the thing with a job is that there's always somebody else telling you what to do.
Yep.
Right? You're always working to somebody else's aims and objectives, unless you're in business for yourself. And that's not a large proportion of the population. So if you are not in business for yourself, if you are employed by an organization or an individual, they're doing a lot of the thinking for you, right?
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. Right? But when you retire, you need to develop this, because now you're going to have to do the thinking for yourself. Right?
Very true.
and unless it's like anything, right? If you go to the gym and you've never been to the gym before, you're not going to bench press 220 kilos in a fit, no matter how big and strong you think you are, right?
Right.
You're going to have to start off at 50 kilos and work your way up. And it's the same with this, right? If you've been used to a lot of other people doing your thinking for you, nothing wrong with that to a point, but if you're going to start thinking for yourself, you're going to have to start small and build your way up. And again, I cover that in the book in terms of mindset and how to shift your mindset and do it in bite-sized chunks. Because the other thing with shifting your mindset is that your relationships with the people around you change as a result.
Yep. And your relationship with yourself changes, and your relationship with everybody else changes as well.
Correct. And you need to be ready for that.
Yep.
You know, I mentioned an episode in our lives when we announced to our families that we were moving to Germany, and the reaction that Iris's mother got was not very positive.
Wow.
Because she could see her daughter being taken to Germany, and that's where we were going to stay forever, even though we said it's only 2 years, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't realize this, and I do talk about it in the book, but I didn't realize this until a little bit further on. As a matter of fact, it was probably 6 months before we were leaving that I realized what was going on and why. Her and her husband, when they brought their daughters to Australia, from Germany came to Australia for a 2-year adventure.
Right. Oh, I love it.
And that was in 1972. And
Wow.
they went back for holidays, but they didn't ever go back to live. So as soon as we mentioned that 2-year adventure to Germany, Barbara straight away jumped to the, oh dear, that means they're not coming back, because that's what she did.
That was her framework. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So when your mindset changes and the way you view the world changes, the way you communicate with people also changes, which means their responses and reactions to you are likely to change as well, right? So for some people and some relationships, that doesn't really matter. But for the relationships that are important to you, you need to be prepared for that and have a strategy in place to minimize any friction that's likely to arise out of those changes.
Yeah. So really, I mean, speaking very philosophically, retirement can be classified as a state of mind, in which case you could say anybody could be retired at any age, at any time in their life, if they've done the work on themselves to get to the point where they understand exactly how they're living their life.
Correct.
Yeah. So you can get really philosophical about this.
We can.
Yeah. And you don't even actually have to have a side hustle or something that you're developing. You could even theoretically be retired in your day-to-day job or day-to-day life just by the way you think about how you live.
Yes, definitely. Without a doubt. I mean, obviously, the more flexibility you have in your life to be able to make decisions to do things, the more relaxed your retirement is going to be.
Yep.
It is difficult to be retired mentally
Yeah.
when you can only take 4 weeks off a year.
Right.
Because there's lots of other things that you would like to be doing that you can't, right? So, but rather than saying, I can't do that, it's about saying, I can't do that yet.
Yeah. Or how can I find a way to re-engineer how I work so I can take a bit more time off and work at the same work wherever I go and find another way. There's always a way.
Definitely. Yeah.
I love it. And how has the book been received so far?
Look, really, really well. The people that access the book give me very positive feedback. I had some people up in the Glasshouse Mountains here in Queensland. They had an 8-year retirement plan. They're both in their late 50s, and both of them, one of them has got a semi-government job. The other one has got a full-on government job. So they're working towards that, superannuation point where they can sort of say, that's it, I'm out of here.
Yep.
And after reading the book, they've brought that 8-year plan forward to be 15 months.
Sensational.
So they're actually going to retire, her in her late 50s, him in his early 60s.
Sensational.
And when you hear stories like that, it's really gratifying, because you know that you've helped people see something in themselves that they didn't see before.
Yep. Have there been any harsh challenges of any concept in your book? Anybody?
Not that I've been made aware of.
Okay.
No, I mean, I've had a number of people with questions in terms of some of the processes in the book, but that's natural because they've not experienced or been exposed to those processes before. So that takes a little bit of coaching, I guess is the best word for it, to provide them with the confidence and the tools to be able to move forward. It's a little bit like sport, the coach says, look guys, here's what I want you to do, but the first couple of times they do it, they're not particularly good at it, or they think it's not working, because until the coach says, yeah, but don't forget you didn't do this quite the way that I asked you to, and that you could, oh yeah, okay. So it's about refining, and look, it's very rare, and I say in the book that no plan, it doesn't matter how thorough it is, no plan survives intact once you activate it, right? Because life has a habit of throwing curveballs at you. That's what life's all about, and that's no different in retirement to any other stage of life.
That's right. And it's also a personal journey. Everybody's going to express it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Oh, sensational. And so tell everybody where we can find the book.
Look, the best place to find the book is on the website, whencaniretire.com.au.
Great, love it.
That gives you, access to either buy the book online for a Kindle, Amazon, or to buy the physical book, which is shipped Australia-wide. And it also gives you contact points if you want to drop me a line. And all of that sort of thing to ask questions. I'm more than happy to communicate with people, exchange emails, all of that sort of thing.
Awesome.
To help, because I really do see my journey now as helping free other people, so that they can experience what I've had the luxury and privilege of being able to experience, by some alternate thinking and a little bit of blood, sweat and tears and perseverance, and away you go.
I love that. I think it's so important, because a lot of people had in their mind that retirement is a financial destination, whereas you're saying it's not a financial destination, it's a mindset destination.
Yeah, look,
it's a very different thing.
Retirement is about finally being able to work to live.
Yeah.
Most people go through life living to work.
Yeah, that's right.
Even when they don't want to, right?
That's right.
So, retirement really does give you that opportunity. I mean, the bottom line is, come 67, in the majority of industries now, you're going to be forced to retire.
Yeah.
That may change, depending on a number of variables, but you're going to be forced to. What I'm saying to people is, don't wait for the finish line. Establish your own finish line, establish your own timeline, and work towards that. Because whether you're 35, whether you're 42, whether you're 57, no time is the wrong time to be establishing when you get to choose your lifestyle.
Yeah. Are you still doing a bit of business coaching and management consulting along the way?
Yes, I am. But I limit myself now. I only work with, between 4 and 6 clients at a time.
Okay.
And I tend to be fairly selective as to who I work with. Mm-hmm. Because for me now, I'm a firm believer in practicing what you preach.
Yep.
And if I'm saying to people, look, do what you love, have a lifestyle you can enjoy, and I'm working all the hours under the sun, it doesn't say very much,
That's right, exactly.
So I try and restrict my consultancy work to no more than 2 to 3 days a week.
Perfect, beautiful.
The rest of the time I can work on my own stuff.
I love it. So you're in Queensland, obviously in sunny Queensland, enjoying the lovely weather.
Well, not so lovely at the moment, but this is our wet season, so we can't complain. But yeah, most of the time I love Southeast Queensland. It's got a great climate. We have winter. I think it's the second Wednesday of July.
Yep.
And that's about it.
Sensational. Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think it's a fantastic book. It definitely is very thought-provoking, and I love the discussion we've had, because it really challenges, the conventional definition of retirement. And I think it can help a lot of people, think about their lives and live with purpose, as we said earlier in the conversation. So yeah, I commend you. It's a great book. I think everybody should definitely, have a read. I'm going to put all the links in the show notes for everybody, so you can find it. And of course, if you want to work with Dennis or find out what Dennis does, as well, I'll put all his details in as well. Any last words, Dennis? I mean, you've given us so much, but I always like to give my guests the last few words.
Look, it's been a real pleasure having the chat with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your tribe. I hope there are some people out there that some lights have gone on as a consequence of the conversation that you and I have enjoyed today. Look, I think the last thought that I'll leave people with is that we all deserve the life we work for. So if you're not happy with your life, it's up to you to take the steps to turn that around. No shortage of opportunity for you to be able to do that. Maybe what you're lacking is support. And I would love to support you in being able to make that shift and at least make the first few steps on your journey to being able to enjoy a life of choice rather than that life of quiet desperation.
Beautiful. I've got goosebumps just listening to all that. Fantastic. Well, everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed that. The book is called If 70 is the New 50, When Do I Get to Retire? but I'll make sure I put all the links in there for everybody to access that. Dennis, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really enjoyed it. And everybody out there, we'll see you very, very soon for another episode. Stay tuned. Playing with Perspective, the Suspended Animation Podcast. Bye for now.